Okay, well, let's go ahead and kick things off. Just to start off the conversation, my name is Matt Day. I'm a senior PM here at Lob, focused on the address verification product. I'm joined by my colleague and staff software engineer, Luke Birdeau. And today we're going to be taking you through the importance of address data. And also, Luke will be taking us through a special demo of our address elements, which is the latest addition to the Lob Address Verification product. So again, I'm going to start us off by talking about the importance of address data and the challenges and costs associated with it. Luke's going to do an overview of Lob's AV solution and how it solves the challenges across many verticals. And then this demo, I think, is going to be really special for especially anyone that has an input of address data. It really will help with drop-off, improve conversion, and also as far as the cleanliness of data, improve what goes into your downstream systems. As far as sort of best practices, we'll close by answering any questions you have. So feel free while we're going through this presentation today to add any questions in the Q&A window throughout. And if we don't get to your questions live, we will surely follow up with you and answer them directly. Lastly, this will be recorded. So if you miss something, please don't worry about it. We'll copy you on the recording after. All right, so if we look at the Amazon effect, what is that all about? We start to think about, well, actually, one thing we really hear about regularly from our e-commerce and retail customers is the growing importance of their shipping experience. So it goes without saying that Amazon has driven customer expectations on this front. Their relentless focus on cost, delivery, and customer service has created an incredibly high standard that other retailers strive to meet. So nowhere is this more evident than when we look to shipping and fulfillment. So customers now expect to pay little or nothing for shipping for goods they buy, while expecting rapid delivery and full transparency. So again, we're shipping more and more and more. This is an underlying expectation of our consumers. But when we look at it, who's to blame? So what's kind of interesting about this is that anytime there's a poor shipping experience, it impacts the customer satisfaction overall and lifetime value, which I think are pretty intuitive. But when we think about these rising expectations, it can really impact and be detrimental to the business. So if we put this more simply, an exceptional shipping experience, it's no longer a differentiator, it's table stakes for e-commerce companies and retailers as well. So the bottom line is that we need to make things more quick and accurate while tightly controlling costs to ensure that we can really fulfill and maintain a high level of customer satisfaction. So if we look at the material cost of the customer satisfaction and lifetime value, 94% of consumers blame the retailer if the delivery goes poorly. So even if the issue is due to a minor error on their part, that's interesting, right? So that's something that we need to help our customers as they walk through the journey of entering in their address. The other part is that 70% say they're unlikely to return to a retailer after a bad experience. So it just shows you that the first time experience is really, really critical across, you can apply this to any vertical really, but especially in e-commerce, when a consumer can jump to the next page or the next website and find potentially a similar good, the stakes are quite high. So if we jump over to as far as address data overall, 20% of the addresses entered online contain mistakes. So that's not really surprising when you consider the increased usage of mobile phones, the fact that people are really using addresses and entering them from different mediums. The other part is around just general mail, right? So 1.4 billion pieces of mail are marked return to sender per year, which is a substantial cost. And then the last piece is address data is one of the most critical points of failure in a shipping process. And undeliverable mail and packages cost businesses over $20 billion per year, according to USPS estimates. And much of this cost is attributable to simple address errors. Those are the type of things that we focus on every day and ensure that we cleanse and fix for our customers. One last touch on this is just around the complexity around international addresses as well. So if you look at multiple address formats and languages, even small errors can start to mount up and add enormous costs with international shipping fees and just the complexity of working across many localities. So jumping to as far as address data is critical for accurate mail delivery, 60% of households pay at least one bill online, and 13 times higher response rate than email alone. So this is just talking about mail as a whole, and how the financial services sector is the largest sender of mail in the US. So what this means is that addresses do not just impact retail and e-com, it also touches on the financial services sector. So financial services providers are increasingly becoming aware of how crucial accurate address data is for their business. And the importance of this data in the financial services sector is twofold. So the first being communications. So financial services companies are the largest sender of both transactional and marketing mail in the US. So just a kind of a fun stat to share at the next socially distanced party you attend. In 2018, financial services sent 10 billion pieces of transactional mail, such as bills, statements, and account notices, and 16 billion pieces of marketing material. That is a lot of mail. And the quantity of mail sent is not surprising when you consider customer preferences and effectiveness. So, USPS reports that 60% of households pay at least one bill by mail every year. So just a correction in that stat. So there is at least one thing happening in mail to pay a bill per year. And the direct mail actually gets 13 times higher response rate than email alone. So the return on investment is pretty strong, especially if you're driving sign up or trying to get the attention of a consumer in this financial context. So that can either be to pay a bill or to sign up for a new product. And just to bring it back to the numbers on the previous slide, 20% of the addresses entered online contain mistakes. So these mistakes will add up to significant wasted costs just on return mail, not to mention the impact to the customer's experience. So that's just some general framing for this. One of the nuances, or one of the kind of most latest trends in the financial services space, this is something that's been asked of all of the large financial providers, is a process called Know Your Customer. You might hear KYC, KYB, and it is something that anyone that is offering financial products will need to start to do in order to remain in compliance. And it is a notoriously vague piece of the Patriot Act, but essentially it just requires all financial institutions to adequately complete due diligence on each of their customers. So this in theory sounds straightforward. However, there are no clear-cut guidelines for how to do this. So most companies have to, usually they outsource this to a third-party KYC provider. But either way, the process they choose to implement, compliance costs are significant and are going to increase. So when we think about, well, what does this mean from a financial standpoint? KYC costs have already increased by 19% on average in the last 2 years, and 23% for smaller companies with assets under 10 billion. So this is a mounting cost. It's not necessarily going away, and there's a lot of good reasons behind this. So it does help with risk mitigation and fraud. So there are some definite major plus sides to this. The information, including address data that these companies capture on the front end, gets passed directly onto our KYC providers for verification. So if any of this information contains typos or invalid information, it gets flagged and sent back to the provider. So it can cause major inefficiencies if you have a loan sign-up flow, credit card sign-up flow, any kind of process where you want to drive conversion You want to help people, sign up for the best product for them. But if they're hampered in the beginning, then there's the possibility of them bouncing, and there's also just costs that you're eating as a financial services provider. Okay, let's jump to just some of the kind of bad data overall and what that means. So verticals aside, the big message here is don't let bad data cost you. So maintaining address integrity requires a multifaceted approach. And the way we think about it is in two ways. One is a sort of upfront. I think of that as like top of funnel. So that's to verify and correct address data at the point of entry. So let's kind of stop a mistake before it happens. And this is something that you have to be really tuned into your customer on how they, want to use your product. And so some customers are okay with a correction. Others, you may just want to let those errors pass through and correct them downstream, depending on who your buyer is. We've talked to a lot of customers, some in more of in healthcare, right, have different needs than those that are in financial services. And would love to have deeper discussions with everyone on this call, about the nuances of your business and how we can help. But the other part of it is that ongoing cleansing. So that can look like batch cleansing, incremental changes over time. Using our US verifications endpoint would be one way to do that. And then the upfront is looking at where we would sort of touch on AV elements, I think is a wonderful option for that. To really handle the type ahead and initial proposition of an address, and then from there, actually cleansing it and having the error validation and so forth. Jumping to just our overall offering. We have both a US and international address verification offering with geocoding and auto-completion and a very developer-friendly package. We hear a lot of positive feedback around our documentation. If you ever feel the opposite, then please phone me directly and we will fix that right away. So Lob brings together both global address verification with client-side auto-completion in a complete developer-friendly package. And what that means is with Lob, you can really speed client data entry, correct address errors and typos, and verify deliverability across the globe. So when you think about KYC compliance costs, that is one way to easily reduce them at a very small fraction of the cost. And then also easily just keep client information up to date to ensure integrity of your database. So our customers have reportedly been able to reduce the bad data entering their KYC process by 20% after implementing Lob. And when you consider the amount of money being spent each year on KYC, a 20% reduction in bad data means a pretty massive savings for businesses. That's just one example. And you can apply this to many different verticals where something as sort of innocent as an address, but also very nuanced, can have major implications, both positive and negative, depending on how you think about that in your overall workflow for your customer. Okay, so lastly, we're here to talk about the overall offering. So again, Lob is an enterprise-grade address verification for companies of all sizes. So what does that really mean? When I think about this, what it really means is enterprise grade as far as scale, speed, accessibility, but the sort of simplicity and ease of use of an SMB solution where you can go online, sign up right away and get started and test it out with your team. And that's really what we're always going for. Something that's very easy to implement and use, but also very robust once you start to use it and can support millions, if not billions of verifications for your organization. So a couple of the highlights, these are sort of our four main buckets. You can think about AV, address auto-completion, our certified USPS address verification. So this means we have to go through strict requirements through USPS to get the certification for the CAS certification. Our international address verification to standardize and cleanse international addresses for the majority, for 240 countries. And then finally, our zip code lookup to find cities, states, and counties. I think one thing just to touch on our US verification, the response is quite robust. So if there are things that you're looking for, it was most likely there are delivery point verification, geocoding, and so forth. And just lastly, before I hand it over to Luke for a live demonstration, he's going to be taking us through Lob Address Elements, which today is a simple JS plugin for any HTML web form to enable US autocomplete, or full US verification for deliverability, and provide the front-end error messaging, all fully configurable. So this is something that we feel really will improve the ease of use and speed of implementation to have autocomplete on your website in minutes, not days. And we're really, really excited about it, and looking forward to hearing Luke take us through today's demonstration. So Luke, you have the floor.
Okay. And just want to let me know when you see that form come up, Matt.
Yeah, it looks great.
Okay, awesome. So what we see here, and I'd like to start with just a demo of something that doesn't work. And what we're seeing here is a standard HTML address input field. And you can imagine that the user got to the screen perhaps as part of some e-commerce process or at a financial institution, that last step of a identity verification. Now, the problem with this address is it's got multiple mistakes. It's 185 Birdie Street. We actually wanted to say Berry Street. The zip code is 94107, and we are missing a suite or unit number for this address. And one thing that's interesting about this is with form verification, you can put in the little things. You can test for a zip code. You can check and see whether or not that state field has two characters. But in the end, we don't really know if the address is real without really going back to, as Matt introduced, back to that single source of truth with the USPS. And so what we have are regular updates, an ability to connect with the USPS and really know what's real. Is that address, is it still in existence? Is an address that was rejected last month, is it now available? So these are the sorts of things that you can only do with this sort of live interaction. So one thing that we notice with this form then, we have 3 errors and still I can submit that form. So what I'd like to do here is introduce how we can solve this. I'd like to look instead back at that HTML source code. And that's what I'm going to do here, is just walk through these various fields and think about what can we do to this standard form to improve that user experience. To get started, I'm going to click on this. I want to show this. Everything that I'm going to be describing here will provide links at the end of the webinar, but I wanted to say that it's all available out on GitHub, and I've put that address here at the top. So any questions you might have about details can all be had there. Now, as far as getting started, what will your experience look like as you implement address elements? It starts with registration. Go out to Lob, sign up for a free account if you don't have one yet. In order to activate your free monthly quota to get these US address verifications and auto completions, you need to enable billing, but it will allow you a free monthly quota. Once you have that set up, the last step is to get your key. And this is necessary in order to make that API call. And that key is going to look something like this, and you're going to get it from that page. But this is really the first 3 steps of getting started. Now, once you get that far, it really comes down to adding the address elements library to your HTML. If you want to understand what our principle is or the strategy, this is really about making this available as a no-code solution. What's the least amount of work required of you in order to implement this added functionality? So to get started, what we've done is we've hosted our library out at a CDN. And if you take that script tag, this library, what you'll do is you will add it to your page. So I'm going to go over here to the source HTML. I'm going to scroll down, and you can see right here that I've got started already, and I went ahead and I added that script tag right here to the bottom of the markup. But I've done nothing else here. Now, what this does is it enables our script to scan and analyze the page. And so you as a developer, anytime you want to add functionality related to address verification or auto-completion, you simply tag those elements that you need to perform that activity. So let's get started with our initial problem. And you can see over here, which is the user misspelled Berry Street and wrote Birdie Street. So what we'd like to do is try to avoid those sort of mistakes that a user has when they type. What we'd like to do is enable US auto-completion. And in order to do that, now that we've added this script element, we need to identify the primary line where the user is going to come in and type in their address, their street name. And what we'll do is I'm going to add an attribute to this standard form called data lob primary. And what this does is this identifies for the address elements library that this is a special input field. This isn't just any input field that we're going to say, oh, this can't be empty. This is different. By enabling data lob primary as we do here, I'm going to go ahead and I want to copy just this because I'm going to put in some more places here. But let's go in. I've added this in. I'm going to save it. And let's go over to our form now and refresh and see what that behavior does with that one change. Okay. We go into 180, and now we can see what's happening here. 185 Berry, and we can choose that address. Now, what you're seeing here is that, of course, the primary line, it looks great. We no longer have a typo, but where's the rest? And that's really what we're looking for, is what can we do to take that information as the user types and inject that into these remaining fields. And we do that by the same thing we did with primary, by identifying the input. So I'm going to here to this, this one right here for street 2, and this is going to be data lob secondary. So I'm going to write secondary. And I'll go through and I'll do this for the rest of those as well. City, state, and finally zip. I'll save my changes and come back over to my form. I'll refresh. You give this just a minute. Sometimes it takes a second for the form to refresh. Here we go. And I'll say 185 Berry. And this time when I make my selection, we can see that the fields were filled in correctly. Now this is great. And this is really about auto-completion, right? Which is only one side of the problem. We want to help the user type less, right? We want to have less friction as they fill out this form. We want to have less margin for error. But the flip side of this is we still don't know if the address is correct. In fact, if we submit this form, and I'll do that now, it was submitted just fine, but in reality, the form has a problem. The form is missing the suite number, and we don't know that because we don't have address verification enabled. So let's come back to the form and let's add that other service to our form in order to add that. So if we look at the form element up here, what we do is, and we do just like we did before, we identify the field using the data lob pattern, but in this case, data lob verify. And this is what we're saying here with data lob verify, is that we want to use the US verification service. And there are different modes for verification. I won't go into too much detail there, but depending upon your use case, depending upon how strict it needs to be, do you want to allow false negatives, false positives? How many errors do you want to allow to pass through? So for today's demonstration, I'm going to choose strict. But we have other modes such as pass-through, relaxed, or normal. And you can view those in the user guide out at GitHub. So let me put down strict for this. This now ensures that the form will be verified when the submit button is pressed. The other thing that we need to do whenever you add this sort of verification is you must provide to the user a way so that they know that the error occurred. You have to communicate the error to the user. So what I'm going to go here is I'm going to add just a simple div. I'm going to style it, and you can style. This is the important thing about address elements. We do not get involved in the styling of your form. We add behaviors. And this just gives you complete flexibility to make sure that you always remain on brand. So right here, I'm just going to use a standard alert class. And these have nothing to do with address elements, but this is all about just putting in a styled container where you might put in that error message. And the important thing, though, is that you need to identify it. And in this case, data lob verify message. And then let me go here and close out my div tag. And there we go. So what you see is a standard element where for putting in data lob verify message, and that corresponds with data lob verify. So let me go back in here and let's save this. And I'll come back here to the form itself. And let's refresh and do a couple of things. First thing I'll do is I want to just see if this will work. I want to just click the submit button on this empty form and see what happened. And we can see something interesting here. We immediately have verification enabled. So we're literally being walked through the form. We're being told how to improve that usability on the fly. So let's go in and put 185, and we can see the auto completion. It's still working as before. We make our selection, and let's go ahead and submit that one more time. And now we can see that final message that we've been missing, which is we need a suite or a unit number. Now, in this case, I'm going to go ahead and I'll write, why don't I just write suite 6100 and submit that one more time, but I'm going to go ahead and do another change. I'm going to introduce an error just to show what that's like. I'm going to put in a number 6 for the zip code and submit this again. And we'll notice a couple of things. We'll notice that not only was the suite name standardized, but the zip code was fixed. And that's one of those key things about address elements is even in those moments when the user makes a mistake, we're constantly not only confirming, but finding ways to enrich, fix, and repair that address and show where that is. Because we're in strict mode, we ask the user to confirm their change and submit the value, and it comes through. Now, there are other fields and we'll say attributes available to extend this even more. I think what I'll do is just for time's sake, it looks like we only have a few, but just want to point out a couple of additional areas. One of those things that we do is the ability to also do inline error messages on the fields themselves. And you can come into here on a field like this and do data lob primary message. And now we'll have that sort of error message at the field level coming through as well. So in the interest of time, Matt, I think I'm going to wrap this up and leave some time, but let me come back over here and stop sharing at this point.
Great, thanks, Luke. That was amazing. I think the things that Luke was going to demonstrate is just quickly kind of how we can handle error handling there. And one moment here, handle error handling, and also the fact that it can be different strictness standards. So the relaxed and strict can handle deliverability and pair that depending on the needs of your organization, whether you have more of a shipping use case or something more high conversion. So thank you, Luke. We are at time. I wanted to touch on just 2 quick questions that came through. And then any other questions that we saw come through, we'll go ahead and reach out to you directly. So fear not, your questions will be addressed, and that's really important for us. The first one was just on how often is your data updated? So how often is the address data updated? We ingest this data directly from the USPS, and it is updated monthly. So that's one. The next was on, we have a big commerce customer, sounds like. So I use BigCommerce for my storefront. Do you integrate with them? So we're actually assessing a handful of the e-commerce platforms right now. And so if this is something that's high priority for you, please reach out, and we're happy to partner with you in this endeavor. We're currently assessing 3 of the large e-commerce providers today, and are considering a partnership. So would love to hear your take. If you are using some of the more enhanced versions or enterprise versions of these products, AV Elements in some instances will actually work. So, but keep us posted. Okay, so I just in the sake of time, we just wanted to thank, first off, thank you, Luke, for that wonderful demonstration. And thank you to our customers and those that are interested in Lob. We really appreciate you taking the time. And we're hoping that you learned something today. And if you are interested in the Lob product, you can simply go to lob.com/address verification, learn more at our blog, introducing Lob Address Elements, or check us out on GitHub if you want to go straight to the source. But either way, if you sign up, it's completely self-serve. You can get 300 free verifications, and would love to hear how your experience is going and however we can help you with addresses in the future. So with that, thank you all. Have a great rest of the day, and we appreciate you taking the time.